Hello, Guardians. Today is September 16th, 2022. My name's Danfinity, and welcome to Destiny Digest. You're in for a treat this week. We have a conversation with YouTuber Skarrow9 and the host of the Scrimcast podcast, ItsBobbySocks, talking about Season 18 so far, SBMM and Crucible, Saltagreppo's Divinity thread, and how to give meaningful feedback on the internet, and if that's even a thing. That'll be on the back half of the show, so make sure that you stay tuned. But first, this week saw the release of not one, but two hotfixes coming down the pike. Hotfix 6.2.0.3, released on Tuesday, carried what seemed to be the brunt of the weight. This hotfix addressed several issues in the King's Fall, including the deep sight chest rune bug, clarifying the overzealous challenge, and the buffs and debuffs as they appear on the screen. It also included a slight nerf to Lorelei Splinter Helm by reducing its restoration stack from 2x to 1x. As always, I'll be including links to the full notes in the description of the episode if you'd like to read further. Hotfix 6.2.0.4 read simply a single line of text. Player investment data sustainability, localization, and performance updates. Now, this may sound like developer jargon, and it is, but an admin of my Discord community, Rogue Lyshel, who works in game dev, broke it down in a post saying, localization is anything to do with text and translations. Player investment data sustainability is a metrics thing that executives are interested in, most commonly DAU, or daily active users, and DARPU, daily active revenue per user. Changes to sustainability in these things usually result in a modest shift in the monetization scheme in favor of the player to encourage more spending, as well as generally making things more easily attainable to keep players engaged. Performance updates is pretty straightforward, engineering server tweaks to make the game run better. This week's post was brought to us by community manager Hippie. We start out strong with the Bungie production security team announcing one of the largest ban waves in Bungie history this week. They remind everyone not to utilize account recovery services or a service/person that does pinnacle or endgame activity for you. Doing so could jeopardize your account if the service uses cheats in order to get you that W. Not to mention that it's against terms of service. Moving into PvP, they saw an uptick in activity for Eruption with consistent player numbers throughout the week, extrapolating positive community sentiment from that. They did mark that a scoring issue was in effect during this week of Iron Banner, so it would be addressed before the second week comes around later this season. In the next section, they spoke on latency in the control playlist, the quitter penalty remaining, but it will become separate from the competitive suspension timer in the future, and they also touched on some map weighting. The maps Disjunction and Cathedral of Dark have moved from increased map weight, meaning that you see them more often than other maps, into the wider pool of fully weighted maps as of September 15th. The Destiny 2 and Fall Guys collaboration goes live this Saturday, September 17th, allowing you to customize your guys with ghosts and class apparel. I wonder if you can grab the ghost and crush it. And the King's Fall Master Raid will go live Tuesday, September 20th at reset with double loot for challenges in normal mode. In Master, encounters will reward stat-focused armor, challenges will reward adept versions of the weapons, and all encounters will be set at a power level of 1600 or plus 30 to the power cap. Wrapping up the TWAB, be sure to pick up the Seraphim's Gauntlet community emblem as a memorial tribute to longtime Bungie community member Seraphim Crypto. There's an amazingly moving piece in the TWAB from community moderation lead Eduardo, so do be sure to check out that post in full through the notes. Now, on to this week's conversation with Skarrow and ItsBobbySocks. Welcome, Bobby and Skarrow, to the show. We got a lot to cover today, so why don't we go ahead, first off, and tell the folks at home where they can find you first and foremost. That way, if they stop listening by the end of this thing, they can at least find you guys. So, Bobby, what about you? Where can people find you on the internet?
I am BobbySocks. You can find me on mostly Twitter and Twitch as ItsBobbySocks, all one word. Why you would want to find me, I'm not sure, but I'll take it.
Well, I mean, you're known throughout the community for giving like pretty level feedback about like PvP as a whole in the game. So that's one reason why they would want to come and find you, right?
I like to ruffle feathers.
Yeah. Occasionally you stir the pot, yeah, and it's pretty good when you do. Skarrow, what about you, good sir?
Yeah, so I'm one of the weird ones. I'm a YouTube streamer and YouTuber.
How dare you?
So I'm like one of like a handful at Skarrow9, and then also posting like sort of serious takes on Twitter on the daily. So I like to meme. I've got a very dry sense of humor when it comes to that sort of stuff. So I just like to have a little bit of fun. So
Heck
you know,
yeah. So before we get a little bit like into the weeds here, what brought you guys to what brought you on your journey to Destiny and or creating content for Destiny? Bobby, we'll start with you.
Ooh, that's a good one. So one of my best memories of all time is the midnight launch of Halo CE at GameStop. I camped out in front of it, got CE. I have been a Bungie fan since then. So when I found out that Destiny was coming out, I immediately jumped on it. I found a way to find a D1 alpha test key, and I played it from then on. And I've been here ever since.
That's awesome. Yeah, I haven't been here since alpha, but like a little bit after launch. So like it's always impressive to meet somebody who got an alpha key to me. What about you, Skarrow?
Yeah, so I was in high school when Destiny was announced, and I didn't really have internet at the time, which really sucked. There's a whole story. One of the stories I like to tell is me and my friends were big looter shooter fans. We played Borderlands 2. I would go over to one of my friends' houses, and we'd LAN Borderlands all the time. And so when he told me about Destiny, I was super excited. It just looked great. And so I went to GameStop and I pre-ordered it. And I walked out of GameStop and I texted him and he's like, dude, you're an idiot. It requires internet. And I lived in the boonies. And so I was just like, oh. So I literally turned right back around, walked into GameStop, returned my pre-order. And then we finally got internet the summer before I went to college. And that was right before, I guess it wasn't even summer. It was it was the spring, right before House of Wolves launched. So that's like exactly when I started. And then, just went from there. Here we are.
From there, history.
Yep. And so, Destiny.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys so much once again for being on the show. So let's get into it. Season 18 has come out. It's been out for about 4 weeks now. What are your thoughts overall in the season? How are you guys enjoying Catch Crash? Like the expeditions, the general vibe of the season overall?
Who wants to take it first? Yeah, sure. I've got to say, I'm having a lot of fun with the theme of this season. I wish the story was a little bit more, a little bit, it's like a 2-second thing every week, whatever. I think there's a lot of interesting things going on. I think there's a lot of interesting lore implications. Catch Crash is a lot of fun. I'm actually enjoying it a lot. Expeditions are incredibly mid, and I've done 4 times as many of those because the triumphs are way grindier for the worst activity. I don't know who decided that. And sorry, that's an important thing to know about me. I'm a max triumph score guy. So it's like I have all the titles. I am working on getting back up to max triumph score. That's the type of player I am. And so that dictates where I spend the most time in my games. And that unfortunately has been expeditions, which are so unbelievably sleeper. So other than that, though, I've been really enjoying the season with Kingsfall and all of that as well. So yeah.
I saw your tweets today about the timer in expedition. We can talk about that in a moment.
We can get to it.
But
Bobby, what about you, man?
I absolutely love the whole pirate theme. It's fantastic. I absolutely agree with Skarrow. I wish they would have built more onto the story itself. I really like the character progression that we're starting to see with Spider and everybody. One thing that I do absolutely love insanely that I can't speak enough about is the weapons this season. The seasonal grenade launcher that shoots cannonballs is absolutely hilarious to me. And then the blunderbuss shotgun, like I can't argue it. I have so much fun just like throwing on a blunderbuss and running around. And that's saying something coming from, I primarily play PvP.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree. Catch Crash, ton of fun. Expeditions, I did like maybe 10 total.
Yeah.
So jealous.
And haven't touched it since.
Yeah, Catch Crash reminds me a little bit of Menagerie, just in the style of like how like going into the different rooms, fulfilling the puzzles, and then having like a boss every week to fight. I feel like they're as engrossing as that can be, just minus the weapon crafting side of it at the end. But being able to emote at the end for that extra little bit of reward, just fantastic.
I have a problem with that though too, because the triumph requires you to do that 150 times, and I'm not trying to do 150 of those. Well, I am doing them, but it's just like, oh my goodness, they set
just emote every time.
The grind set. Oh, so that was another. So I'm of course friends with a lot of other max triumph scorers, and if you didn't get that, because it's an upgrade, I think it's the middle upgrade on the first row. It's one of the first ones. If you didn't get it week 1, you just wasted like your first 30 runs or whatever. And so it's just like, it was a good time. I'm having fun. I'm living with it. This is a choice I have made. I recognize that, but man, they turned the grind up to 12 this season. And it's, you can see that with the weapons too, like trying to get all the patterns and stuff. I agree. The weapons this season, the weapon design team went to 11. Every one of those looks so unique, and they're fun, and they have awesome perks. And even like the sidearm is interesting. Like, what's the last time we had an interesting sidearm? So it's I've had a lot of fun with the smaller stuff this season. I think for sure a lot more than last season. So yeah.
Sorry about that. I forgot to start recording on OBS. This will be fine. It'll be okay.
Okay, fair enough.
So, yeah, they did have the red bar or the red borders not really being farmable like the past 2 seasons is a little bit of a choice, I think.
Yeah,
at least on their part. I wonder what the feedback was to be like, hey, this section should be grindier, or if it's just something that they're trying out to gauge the interaction with it.
At least last season you could guarantee a red border. This season you can't even do that. So it's like it's super grindy. They changed the triumph with that's required for Scallywag with this hot fix on Tuesday, where you used to have to craft all of them. Now you just need to craft 3. So for the title and stuff, they're being a little bit more lenient, which is nice. The whole, when crafting first came out, some guns were like 3, some were 5. Now it's just like every gun's 5 except for other half. It's like, it's a little much, I think, on some of these seasonal activities. So, I don't know. I'll get them no matter what. That's the type of player I am, but I'm not sure, how the rest of the community is going to fare there on average. So,
pick me.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah. Jump in. This is a conversation. This isn't a hand raising scenario.
Here is my thought on red borders.
Yeah.
I can't stand the fact that it's RNG built on RNG. I can't stand it. Especially with the amount of dares that I have run over since the season started. I made the deal with myself that I was going to sit in dares until I finished.
Sheesh.
That being said, I got 30 of the red retrace path. I got 9 of the other halves. I got 34 Pardon Our Dust and something like 22 BXRs before I got my 5 Wastelanders.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel good.
Well, and it seems counter to what they said about the other half, right?
Yeah.
Like
I got 9 of them.
Yeah, they I kind of have a conspiracy going on where they increased the drop rate there, but they made it they admitted they made it guaranteed red, but they were like, look, this is the rare one to get more people hyped about the returning stuff in dares. Because as soon as day 1, Paul Tassi gets a red one, I get a red one, that gets a lot of clicks because people think it's still really rare, and then people are like replaying that content and stuff. just a little bit of a Skarrow conspiracy going on. But
I can agree with that.
I'll put it right next to Mothman prophecies over here. So that's perfect.
I mean, I could absolutely agree with that. With the amount that I got to drop, I had 2 of the other halves drop before my first Wastelander.
Yeah,
Okay.
Wastelander's the one that I've heard a lot of. It took me the longest. And it's weird. Like they just now told us that like your first dare, like your pinnacle drop is guaranteed red that you don't have, like it's drop protection. Where was that info like at the beginning of the season? You know, I would have done 1 on each character a week and been done in 10 weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I feel I feel like there's a lot of things with the crafting system that maybe different parts of the team haven't decided what exactly they want to do or what they want it to be. You know, we can have the whole conversation about it conflicting with like adept weaponries in the raid and stuff. And I feel like it's very much in a very preliminary stage, and they're just still like, what's the best use of this?
Yeah.
What I will say is I'm loving them kind of revamping old activities with it. Like, you know, they brought back a lot of the menagerie weapons. They brought the dares. I would be super shocked if that we don't get like 1 returning set going forward every season. Like maybe they'll redo like one of the raids next or whatever. I think that'd be awesome. Like imagine they bring back 6 of the Last Wish weapons. You can go craft a Supremacy now. That'll get people in that content. And I think it's a great way to refresh the content, but I think they need to be a little bit more clear with their intentions with the system. So
yeah, it needs to be a little softer, honestly. That's the thing. Like, so if I'm crafting something, it's because I want to test the roles that are enhanced, especially in PvP. Because I mean, as metas change, as sandboxes change, like I'm not the type that sits just with one set role and stay with it. Like for a hunter, I'm testing out air assault on Wastelander. For a Titan, I'm testing slide shot. Like these are things that I want to test incandescent. I want to test. And if it takes me that long to get the red borders in the first place, that cuts. I mean, I'm a month in, and now I finally got it crafted, but not even leveled yet.
Yeah. Oh, and the leveling's a whole nother thing, dude.
Yeah.
Like,
just fire up the Golgoroth checkpoint that you got from a Discord server, and you'll be fine.
Yeah. But even then, like, it's just not. Yeah, it's not interesting. It takes so long. One thing that I've never really seen people talk about that irritates me to no end. If your gun's at like 98 and you do an activity that gives you like 16, it doesn't give you 16. It just pushes you right to the next level and stops at 0. Why does it do that? Just like stuff like that.
I know Joe Blackburn, when talking about vault space, right? They had, I think it was in the PC Gamer article that came out like a week or 2 after the reveal of Lightfall. They talked about weapon crafting as a way of kind of curbing vault, like hoarding everything in your vault. I think I remember.
No, they definitely did mention that. It was their first step to address that, but I don't really think it does a great job, because if there's a weapon that has random rolls that I don't like, I don't hold a random roll. But if I have to craft a weapon for a Triumph and I craft it, I'm just sticking it in the vault, because I'm not going to spend the materials and craft that again if I ever want to use it in the future. So I think it's actually like not that great for your vault space. So plus you need 10 more materials, so it fills up your your material slots, your consumables slots, and your inventory, and it's just like it's a very cumbersome system and a very tedious system at points. And so I think that goes back to the whole. I think it just needs to be streamlined a little bit.
Yeah, I think it was. This is the quote here. This is from the PC Gamer article back on. Well, it just says 16 days ago, so we'll take it from that. I'll just edit that in very quickly when I go through this. But it says, ask Blackburn what the long-term answer is concerning like vault space. Because it's not like they're going to stop making new guns every 3 months. And he says, this is still on our list of big, hard Destiny problems that we want to look at. We're looking at systems that can make you feel like you don't have to keep everything, because the world doesn't end if you get rid of a gun. It's a really interesting problem, and I think unique to Destiny, because so many other MMOs just say you can't use this gear anymore. Whereas we're on the opposite side saying, what if you could use everything? And players are like, great, we love using everything, but your house only has so much closet space.
Yeah, they're running into the repercussions of getting rid of sunsetting. I think we're seeing that all over. That kind of goes into the div discussion too. So I'll save some of that for later. But
yeah. So getting into a little bit of that. So we had since the beginning of the season, we've had some changes brought into the PvP sandbox, specifically when it comes to the control playlist. And we got a new mode in Eruption for Iron Banner. Have you guys been playing a lot in the PvP sandbox this season, and what are your reactions so far?
That's your playhouse, Bobby. You go first.
I absolutely love it. I was so excited to load it up. It forces the movements. It forces the pushing and the engagements and the crazy fast pace, like having to get the kills or you blow up. My only gripe with it, and I've had multiple talks on Twitter about this, was the maps that were weighted for it, because they're the newer maps, are too big.
Yeah.
And I know, like, everyone wants maps of different sizes, but if you have 15 seconds to get from one side of disjunction to the other side of disjunction, you're going to blow up in the middle. Same thing with Bannerfall. Same thing with most of those larger maps is you can't make it from one side to the other. I've tested it multiple times. The best bet to go back to disjunction, because that's very weighted right now, is if you pass that threshold of the box, you can't make it back to the other box.
Like the box is at the end of the bridge.
Yeah, the box is at the end of the bridge. If you make it past either of those boxes, you're not going to make it back to the other side.
Yeah.
That's how small the map has to be for it to work in a 15-second timer. And I mean, I've tried it with pulses and everything.
I found it really odd because if I'm not mistaken, Iron Banners usually have like a 6 map rotation. I think it's usually a really small pool, maybe not quite 6, but a couple more than that. And this time there was I feel like every map was in rotation, or most maps were in rotation, which I found really odd because usually there's a very curated set of maps per game mode. And this one they were like, everything, go for it. It's like, I don't know. This feels like one of the easier game modes to balance for, or like pick maps for too, because you don't have to like set points, you don't have to balance heavy or anything. It's just like small maps, medium maps, go. But yeah, I agree. Like even like Vostok, and it's not only like super long maps, but super more intricate maps as well, like where there's a lot of pathways and stuff. Yeah, I almost certainly died more by blowing up this last week than like actually getting shot. So. It's a little frustrating, but I love the game mode personally as well. I'm a big fan of it. We need more fun game modes, so I think this is great first step forward.
It's definitely something that like Iron Banner in the past has been the place where they introduce new game modes to just kind of like test them out a little bit. Like we saw that with Rift last season, the like reintroducing that into the sandbox, Eruption coming in. I thought it was really fun. I thought it was like very kinetic, but then again, I only played one day of PvP last week just because that's all I had time for. Still on that climb for 1580. And the juxtaposition was weird because I went from playing Eruption on Tuesday and having a really fun time with like my teammates to playing. I think I played 3 matches of Control the next day just to get my pinnacle. And it was like a slog. Everybody was playing back. Matches went to time more so. And I was just getting smacked around to a degree that I was just like, I just want the pinnacle. I just want my chess piece so I can leave. That's all I want to do. I think I ended up doing 2 matches of Control and then moved over to Rumble, which at least moves a little bit faster in those regards. I don't know if SBMM is in that playlist, but it is in that playlist.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. So what?
Wait, I lied to you. Hold on. Actually, it's not.
Yeah, I thought it was just in the Control playlist, right?
It's Control and Elim.
Gotcha.
That have SBMM.
Isn't the Elim SBMM? It's not like traditional though, right? It's based off of your comp score or like your glory. I think maybe not.
That's survival. So
Elim, of course. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm in season 3 brain. Yeah, with survival and countdown. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So Elim, survival, and control have SBMM. The weekly rotator and Rumble and Iron Banner do not.
Yeah.
So and I can talk a lot about that one.
Yeah. Go for it, man. Because like this is it was the first time that I was like, oh, this is how that feels. Like this is the change, and this is how I feel it. As opposed to maybe other times that had been brought up. I'm not the hugest PvP fan. I don't know if you can tell that about me, but but it's I find that I go in not really looking for, not even looking to improve, really, just looking to get my pinnacle and then get out of there. But
that's a concern, honestly.
Yeah.
Like that's. I mean, me being a PvP player and very vocal on Twitter, I know the big thing that was pushed for SBMM was to avoid the 3 and out. And I think it's too far gone, as far as for me to put it bluntly. So I had a tinfoil hat moment last night. I remember DMG talking about control being the entry point for new players. So with the introduction of SBMM and Lieber's penalty, because it's coming back, as rough as that is, and I know I have a completely different take on that. I think it should be there.
Okay.
I do. I think it should be in there. I've loaded up into games where it's 2v6s and it's not a fun experience at all. And then if at higher brackets, they don't backfill quickly. So then you're playing 3/4 of a game down 4.
Yeah.
But my tinfoil hat moment was with Dylan saying that control is the new playlist. New players aren't going to feel the effects of SBMM or Lieber penalty.
Right.
That's something you feel at the higher ends. You know, the stacks, the baggers, the scrim players, they all play at the higher end of the spectrum. New players won't feel that. So I'm wondering if that's kind of the first steps into making control a new player accessible mode in the Crucible. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on that too.
Well, I know back in D1, wasn't there like some sort of soft protection for new players where it was like the first 5 or 10 matches or something along those lines were protected so that you weren't necessarily going to be playing against like your dude with a double shotgun just running up to your face, right? Like you weren't going to run into that kind of player. You're going to run into more like your fellow blueberries for the first initial set of matches, and then that would then give way to skill based, like how it had been. I don't know if necessarily they've included that in Destiny 2. I wanted to say they had, but then again, Destiny 2's been around for 18 seasons. So like something's bound to be lost in the mix there, at least memory wise. I remember that being a thing in Destiny 1, and I feel like there's something in there, but would need confirmation on that.
I mean, a lot of stuff has changed throughout the seasons. We see a lot of
absolutely. For
everyone yelling that Bungie doesn't do anything for PvP, we see shifts and moves and changes every single season and the mid seasons. We're loosening this, we're tightening this, we're adding this, we're changing this, we're removing this. The argument that they don't do anything for PvP is a sore one for me, because I see it from a broader spectrum, right? I look at it from the spectrum of maybe they're not adding maps, maybe they're not adding new game modes right now, but they're shifting and modifying these sandboxes to change playstyles. Do I like all of them? Absolutely not. Classy last season was the bane of my existence. I lost my mind every time a hunter dove behind a rock, came out full health in a gunfight. That drove me insane. But it was a test, and it's gone this season, and it's nice. So,
Skarrow, what are your thoughts on the state of PvP?
I mean, just I kind of push back on that a little bit. I'm not the biggest PvP guy. I play a lot of PvP, but I do not claim to be a PvP savant. But I don't know, like those are very different teams, right? The Sandbox versus Map team would be on the Ritual team that designs like strikes and stuff usually. So I guess you could say that, but when maybe people aren't being very specific in their arguments, but I think when most people are saying that, it's like tangible content, PvP meta shifting is something that'll happen naturally as new guns are added to the game, in addition to things like mods and broken seasonal things and things like that. But I think like it comes back to like, we talk about this with strikes and Gambit and stuff. It's like, to me, you can make them as rewarding as you want. If the experience isn't as great either, it doesn't matter. And so if we're playing on the same maps, or they add one map every year and it's not even a good map or whatever, I just don't know. There's always, with all the maps and stuff being, I'm kind of jaded on this because I don't really care that much, but I see where people are coming from, and so it's always really weird. Like for instance, one thing that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I think it's cool, but also it's kind of, they were talking about how Disjunction, they were claiming it was a completely new map or whatever, and it's just not. I've done a comparison on my channel. I've seen a couple other people point out it's just Frontier from Destiny 1. It is the same exact map reskinned, and so how is that different than what they've done with other maps like Shores of Time and stuff? And I'm not really faulting them for that, but I think you have a lot of those little moments like that add up, and people just get kind of sick of it. And I totally get where they're coming from. And then when you have things like Classy and it lasts 3 months, 4 months, and it was, I mean, that sort of stuff was clearly busted in week 1, and so I think people just get a little bit sick of it. Don't get me wrong, it's much better than Stasis ruining everything for 6 months. But
I have an alternative take on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
I like Stasis more than Classy to face.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I think Stasis was still beatable, minus like the Warlocks right out the gate. That was insane. And like the Behemoth Titans right out the gate before the first nerfs. I think Stasis was more beatable, and people are going to flame me for this, but it was more beatable than Classy and Radiant.
I think there's versions of it that aren't like even like last season there were some trials maps where people were doing like the triple Behemoth Titan. That shit you could not beat because they had walls, they had grenades. Are we allowed to cuss, by the way? Sorry, I didn't even check.
How dare you, sir? Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I mean, so it was specific. I remember on Endless Veil so bad on when it was zone control, and they just had infinite ice. You could not beat that. You could not shoot fast enough to kill the Stasis before they got more. And so I think as a whole, there were definitely parts of Stasis that I would much rather play than Classy, but I'm not really sure if it's as black and white as that, to be completely honest. So
I'm pretty sure I know the team that you matched for that. I had them on the Scrimcast. I'm not even kidding. And we discussed that at length on the Scrimcast. Like,
yeah.
And I go, well, how do you beat it? And he goes, Alt F4.
Yeah. I mean, you beat it when accommodations come to the game. You give them a -1. That's how you do it. So
he's like, you can't beat it. The only ways that we found that you could actually beat it were Armamentarium and a Sweet Business, just holding the lane down, or Wither Horde Puddles worked. But beyond that, you just had to hit the shot before they threw the ice with like something like a Lawrence Trevor or a Herbalist. And that was it. So I agree there's outliers on that. I think everyone having healing nades plus Classy Restoration plus Lorelei Titan, it was every class had a break versus just Behemoth Titans that I think caught me.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just think people, I can definitely understand where the PvP crowd can feel neglected. Like for sure, especially like when we got an Iron Banner rework and it wasn't really an Iron Banner rework and all this sort of stuff. So I think doing things like adding Eruption and Rift, these are great changes.
And I think it'll go a long way. But I still think a lot of these, just like a lot of Gambit is being soft ignored, and like strikes are being soft ignored. I think, you know, a lot of Crucibles suffering from that too. It's just so like with the skill-based matchmaking thing, it's so weird. Like me and my friends will just hang out in Crucible sometimes. It's a good place to turn your brain off. And it's like this season we've been doing that in calm. Like how over control? Like what world do we live in? That doesn't make any sense. But it's like, how does Iron Banner have the best feeling matchmaking? And how is comp the best when Iron Banner's not here? It just everything feels so backwards to me as a non PvP. I'm like better than average, but I'm not amazing, you know. It's hard to kind of draw yourself in the box because everyone in the comments will be like 1v1 me nerd, you know. So it's like, you know, I have all the titles. That's like, you know, all the PvP titles and triumphs, and I got to 5,500 in season 3. So it's like, you know, I can do stuff, but it's it just all of it just feels kind of backwards and weird right now, and it's just hard. It's hard to put into words, really. So I don't mind skill based. I think it's probably needed to some extent. I'm not an expert on this, you know, but it just how it is now just feels wrong, I think. So at least to me. I agree.
There's an element of the PvP community that really likes to push the 900 days of like neglect for PvP.
Yeah.
I feel like this year they have done a lot to try to make good, but I don't know necessarily if that's something that from my view of what I see on Twitter, from my view of what I see on Reddit, if that is necessary, if those make goods are actually finding any purchase, if that makes sense, like, because it might be just a little bit too late, and especially like with moves that are along the lines of the quitter penalty. Well, like, let's go ahead and get into that. I know that is something that might be needed, but I don't know if it's something that you need after leaving one match, you know, like maybe if you leave like 3 within a gaming session, it's like, okay, chill.
I've heard different reports of that. I've heard people that have been hit back to back and got it. I've heard people that got it after 3. I have not gotten a chance to test it yet, but I've heard others that got it 1. So I don't know if there's a weighting in there where it looks at your completed matches overall and then it strikes you harder. There's a bunch of rumors that it's anywhere between 1 and 3 over a 4-hour period.
Okay.
If it's 1, that's way too tight.
Yeah.
Way too tight. And like I said before, I'm for lever penalty to an extent. I think if it's 2 within and I've had this talk, I think if it's 2 within a 1 or 2 hour window, that's something that should be penalized. Or if it scales, say you leave your first 2 matches, it's a 5-minute penalty. You leave a third one, it's a 15. You leave a fourth one, you're looking at an hour. Something like that it scales across a 6-hour, 12-hour window.
Yeah.
As it stands, I think there are things that could be changed with it to improve it that make it not sting as much. Because I had a tweet that went off, and I kind of baited some people, and I said, if you leave matches, you deserve to get only blues for the next hour or something like that. I said like for the next 5 minutes or something like that as a joke. And 90% of the comments were,
I could see how that would ruffle some feathers.
Oh yeah. I did it on purpose. I was It was after TV kept posting that he was in games and people kept backing out since the beginning of the season. Like, well, this is a perfect opportunity to open up a discussion. And that's kind of how I bait my tweets is I open it up with a bait and then we discuss, and then I take the value out of their anger and discussion and feed it back as, so this is what you need, and kind of guide that conversation. And 90% of the comments weren't, I left because I had to do something. It was, if I load into disjunction, because that was glaringly the most. It's like if I load into Disjunction, I immediately saw my home screen. Every time.
I mean, I get it though. Like if I'm running strikes and I get corrupted, I'm out of there. Like I got places to be. And it's all, they're two different worlds. But yeah, I think Bungie could very easily make the argument that they impact the same. And it's just like we have I have a joke where it's like anytime, I get Skarrow, I get any of the long strikes. It's like, oh no, I got beavered. And it's like you go to orbit or whatever, And it's like I'm not really one to do that for PvP, but I get it. There are miserable experiences on certain maps and stuff. And it's just like when Cathedral and of Dusk and Disjunction are weighted 70%. Like, well, I don't know. I agree. People shouldn't be leaving every match, but I think that the fact that people are leaving matches is indicative of a larger problem, and like. Slapping people's hands for being mad about something else isn't exactly the best way to address it. I don't think, especially when it seems very rushed. Like we haven't brought this up, but it's the comp penalty screen. Like it's not even a new one. It's like, you off the competitive game. It's like the hell I did. This is some like quick play. I'm a quick play Andy, bro. Like what's going on?
I think my theory behind that is it was easier for them to port it straight over.
Yeah.
While they build a more permanent solution to fix. Because I mean, the first 3 weeks of Twitter before this was implemented was people complaining constantly about people leaving matches.
Yeah, I know. It's just it's like
it's a seesaw.
Yeah, it's like when your pets act out and people are like positive reinforcement, not negative reinforcement. Like, it's I think these are symptoms of a larger problem, and attacking the symptom instead of the core problem isn't necessarily going to fix anything, and I think it's just going to make it worse, actually. So I think I see why people are pissed off, and I get it, and it's just like it's one of these things I don't think we'll see anything talked about for 6 months or whatever, so it is.
I think it's going to come up in the TWAB this week.
You think?
I do.
I would love to be wrong. I would love, or even just a discussion to be started on Bungie's end would be great. But I would love to be wrong on like an actual implemented fix, or something addressing this actually game side. Love to see it.
I know a friend of mine, Kevin OSX, posted on Twitter. He said something along the lines of, well, what if they're changing the verbiage around what competitive actually means in the game? That we've seen them redefine and add verbiage to different aspects of the game, like specifically with our 3.0 abilities, and making them maybe a little bit more robust in how they describe things. Maybe they're starting to look at the PvP environment as something that is competitive with these changes that they're adding in.
I just don't know if quick play and competitive are conducive to each other. Like there should be a chill playlist. It's just I'm just gonna keep going back to that because it really feels so weird to me that if I go load up Rift right now, there's the weekly rotating. It's fine and it's chill and it's like whatever. You find a match in 2 seconds. Another thing we haven't even talked about. I've had more rubber banding between bad connections and ARC 3.0 this season than ever before. It's ridiculous. Yep. And you
gotta call me out like that, Skarrow.
Sorry. And it's that's the sort of thing that only gets worse as skill-based matchmaking is increased, right? So it's just that definitely does not help either. And it if someone's on a Striker Titan, it's like, is that the ability? Is that person in like Uganda? Like who knows? Like I have no idea if this is just a bad connection or, an ability thing. And so I don't know. I sympathize with a lot of like pretty much everyone actually. And no matter what side you're on, I totally get like Bungie's got a lot of work here. So I do not envy whoever's job that is. Like good luck with that one, So
I don't think we're ever going to know. With how everything went down over the last year,
we honestly shouldn't. I mean, that is understandable, and I think that's a good. We've all said no matter. I mean, even with the salt stuff, like this community, there's like a bunch of 12-year-olds that obviously do not know how to conduct themselves. So it's just like,
Well, with that natural segue.
I got one more. I got one more
yeah.
for the PvP real quick. So
go for it, man.
Summarize, because I like I said before, I spent a lot of time talking to both the top percenters as well as the casual. I hate to use that term, but
Johnny 3 plays.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So having conversations with them, I think the 3 biggest ways to fix PvP as a whole that Bungie could do is 1, add all of the Mars maps back.
Yes.
All of them. We're talking Retribution. We're talking Solitude. We're talking
Meltdown.
Meltdown. Yep.
Oh, so good.
And then there's one more. If you added those 4 maps in, those were universally loved by everyone. They played well as a short range map. They played well as a mid range map. Add those. Remove or lighten the map weighting. That's the other part. Because a lot of people that hate PvP right now is they hate getting disjunction. I loaded one day. I got disjunction. I got cathedral. I got disjunction. I got a eternity. I got disjunction, and then cathedral, and then jab.
Yeah, and tell me we need a quitter's penalty. After the third time in 5 games getting disjunction, I'm out.
It was 3 and 4. We're talking 3 and 4 were disjunction back to back.
No. Ain't about it.
Yeah.
Well,
so.
This kind of reminds me, man, everything in Destiny is cyclical.
Yeah.
Everything. This reminds me of when they heavily favored supremacy. Like, remember when supremacy early on in Destiny 2 was I think it was like every other game mode they could play. Like, it was like Clash, Control, and Supremacy, and the Supremacy just kept getting weighted heavier.
Mm-hmm.
Just the flashback to having a not control only playlist is like, oh my gosh, that was a thing. We had multiple game modes.
We had that, yeah.
That would help if I'm playing Disjunction 4 times in a row, but it's a different game mode time.
Yeah.
Bungie, that one's free, and you've done it before, so
yeah.
That was the other thing, and then the last thing that I think would work well for the upper end, right? This one is so the first 2. Were for the playlist as a whole, for everyone playing, was the adding the Mars maps, easy fix because it's already been in the game, and the map weighting. For the upper echelon of players that have been fighting with connections, I play at 4 a.m. Every third lobby for me, even in comp, I can't read their names. That's kind of the running joke on my stream is like, where's my jet flying over today? So I'm used to that, and I'm used to rubber banding and misconnections, but now everybody else is feeling those in peak hours in the middle of the day. The last thing that would work to help silence the vocal community of the better players is to add Clash as a selectable node, separate from control, and make it CBMM. Not lobby balancing, not Bungie's version of Snake Draft. Specific connection based only. If it valued just connection, the entire upper echelon would be thrilled to win games, lose games, sweat games together. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I think there just needs to be a chill playlist, and I think if you throw, I don't know how they would differentiate it. It feels a little tacky to put like Clash Control and then like CBMM, SBMM like above it or whatever. But if you find a way to let players know and differentiate it and let people decide for themselves, that's fine. But it's do
you feel like maybe they're running into like I know one of the issues of like separating everything out is that they're worried about the player pool thinning across all the different types.
Yeah, they talk about that, but like Call of Duty, like Black Ops 1 had 42 different game modes and they never ran into that. And Destiny's like supposedly top 10 play games at every point on every console now. I have a real hard time believing that. I'm sure, with trials and stuff, it gets very, very apparent, but with party modes, like I just don't know. Like if they throw in a supremacy and stuff, I don't know. Maybe they obviously have the data. I don't, but I don't. We have
I miss supremacy.
Yeah, just all of them. Like where are the fun game modes? Why are we so sick of standing on point? Who plays objective like that? You know, like let me kill a guy, pick up his dog tags, and then we're fine. You know,
I want them to bring supremacy back for Iron Banner. Like that is my like.
Yeah,
it was built for that. It's still a good game mode. It's just people got sick of playing it every other match. But if it was like specifically for like Iron Banner.
Yeah. I mean, I love the idea of using Iron Banner as the new Crucible Labs. You know, give us a gun game. Yeah, next Iron Banner. Every game you spawn. It's a Rumble type mode or whatever. You spawn in. You have to get kills with 10 progressive exotics or whatever that the game automatically puts in your hands. Boom, you win that Iron Banner game. Like let's just like a gun game or all sorts of stuff. It's just make it fun. Make it and. I just don't. It's so like Halo had so many fun game modes, and it's like it's something that Destiny has really never toyed with a lot, except for like Scorched. And Eruption was a lot of fun. I have to give them 1,000,000% credit because I played more Iron Banner this time than I have in a very long time, and I enjoyed it way more than I think I ever have. So, more of that, just more and more and more and more. So. I think that would be a good start to fixing it. And if you're doing fun game modes, who cares if you're playing a sweat ward and gun game? You know, no one cares. Infected or whatever. You know, you're just vibing. So,
I agree, 100%. All right, we can move on. I could talk about that for hours. I spend all the time doing it,
and that's why you were invited here. Thank you. So. Yeah, I think this kind of like moves us into the conversation about like Bobby, you said earlier the Destiny community is a seesaw. In my passing entertainment, I pay attention to politics and everything, and there's something that is constantly said about American politics where it is a pendulum swing, right? Where it's if it goes too hard in one direction, it always corrects itself, sometimes overcorrects itself in the other direction. And I feel like that's a lot of how the Destiny community is as well. If things are going well for a while, it will always swing back to that negative element and so on and so forth. And I feel like this season has been like particularly. To me, it's felt like we're on the side of the pendulum where people are just griping to gripe, like a lot of the time, and you're finding people maybe a little less settled in their enjoyment of Destiny 2. That kind of culminating in what we saw this last week with what Salta Greppo put out a post about Divinity, and his point of view was very well thought out. It was very well presented. It was also from a perspective that not everybody shares. Like he is somebody who, for the past 3 raid races, has won the raid race. And I mean, when you're sitting at the top of the mountain, what's the next pinnacle, right? So he's looking at it from that point of view, and people took offense to it, like to the point where the argument was like, I'm right, you're evil. It was kind of the vibe and a lot of feedback from the comments. So like my question in all of this is it's less about the Divinity discussion, because I feel like that's not the interesting thing in this.
Yeah.
I feel like the getting down to the core of that discussion, it's more about community feedback and how to give a healthier version of it. What are your guys' thoughts? Bobby, we can start with you if you have anything.
I do. So first and foremost, Salt is a buddy of mine.
Okay.
He lurks in my stream a lot, even though I play PvP, and I lurk in his stream a lot, even though he plays PvE. I read through that whole thing multiple times, and I spent a lot of time on Twitter, I spent a lot of time trying to balance discussions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Help people think critically out of the rage scale. And basically what Salt was saying was he would like to see more variety in harder content. And he said that Divinity has had its time in the sun. I took that as I agree. I do. It's the way that people acted to Salt, and I compared this to Mountaintop Recluse.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't have Mountaintop Recluse, you were kicked out of an LFG. If you loaded into a raid, 99% of the time when you ask people, what should I run? And that's like, I have I'd say I have probably sub 50 raid runs total.
Mm-hmm.
But I've done the hard ones. I can do the normal one, I do the hard one, and then I don't touch it again. Mostly just to say I did it.
Yeah.
But every time I loaded into one
matches.
Exactly. Every time I loaded into one, though, the question was, well, do you have Mountaintop Recluse?
Mm-hmm.
That was the go-to every single time. I'm like, what should we use on this boss? Mountaintop Recluse. What should we use in this account? Mountaintop Recluse. Now, Salt's saying the same thing with Divinity. And I don't think people understood that. And it got spun into this accessibility thing.
Mm-hmm.
Which, how do I word this? I think everything should be accessible. I don't think everything should be completable.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I threw out the suggestion, and I got flamed for this as well because I'm not a PvE player, and PvE players got mad. I said, what if Bungie added a next step above master rates, where you're looking at maybe the top 1% of players can finish?
Mm-hmm.
Like a contest mode on top of a hard raid. And the big thing would be give special cosmetics, not weapons, special cosmetics or special armor that reflects that they got that. And I got attacked by a lot of people that said, well, no, because I want it too.
Yeah.
I have a problem with that.
Yeah, I feel like there was a lot of blur, and even kind of that discussion gets into it. Nothing about what Salt was saying was trying to gatekeep anyone. That wasn't part of his original discussion, right? Like, the fact is that we've been using Well and Divinity for every single boss, for every single encounter for 3 years now, or 2 years for Divinity, and that's boring. And yeah, the gatekeeping thing is another problem, another conversation. But the amount of people that would read that and then go, "Oh, you don't want me to get the day one emblem," or what?
No.
That's not the thing. I can tell you, I do every low man. And I do all the 3-man flawless raids. I do all the 2-man flawless raids you can do. I've soloed Atheon. The things that make those interesting is the unique strategies you use. You don't use Divinity for those. You don't use well, you use Well because Well's broken. But just like PvP we just discussed, it gets stale if the meta is static. It needs to change, and it's like Bungie's doing a really, really great thing, I think, with these seasonal mods that like break PvE for 3 months and then it switches. But the fact is, Divinity and Well are so powerful and they're so easy to use. It doesn't matter. They will always be top of the class. And that means encounters have to be designed around it. Rolk was very obviously designed with Divinity in mind because you are not hitting his crit spots without Divinity because he moves around like a madman. Every boss ever you can use Well on and it can be effective. And the thing is it's starting to get very stale for us that run a million raids. And very soon it will start to get stale for those people who don't run a million raids. Just like Mountaintop Recluse got very stale after 100,000 kills or whatever. And the whole argument is this needs to change before it gets old, or it's starting to get old before it becomes a problem. And people are taking that as being ableist or being a gatekeeper. And there's a lot of what's like emotionally driven argument blindness, I think. And it's because they see it as this is easy. This is, what I can do. This is how I contribute or whatever. People get really upset, but there's been 57 different metas in PvE. It always happens. It always rotates. Before Divinity, it was Oppressive Darkness, and before that it was Tractor Cannon, and I guess Oppressive Darkness was actually after Divinity. But there's always something. There's always a debuff. There's always a buff. There's always a strategy. But we've gone to a point where they're just too easy to use, and you cannot replace them without completely breaking the game. And now things are starting to be balanced around them, and things are going to get very stale. And I think people cannot be convinced that that's your argument. Even if that is your argument, no, you're a gatekeeper. You're an elitist. just because you care about the end game. So it's hard. It's a hard thing to convince people of, I think.
From the accessibility aspect, I think that like when it comes to accessibility as a dev enabled design philosophy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of not necessarily what Bobby was talking about when it comes to like a harder like a level up from master, right? More so when it comes to like people with disabilities and things along those lines. I do feel like it is a boon to that side of the community to be able to crit on those on weapons that maybe they otherwise wouldn't be able to.
Sure.
And I think that being what it is a very useful tool.
Yeah,
and
if it's a 30% debuff now, and if you turn it down to a 10%, it still does the same thing without breaking the game.
Yeah,
right.
That's what Saul said too.
Yeah, there's no one's asked.
He said reduce the debuff. And that's it.
No one's asking for it to be removed. It should not be the most effective thing because it is the easiest thing to use, which is inherently why it's good for people with disabilities. That's the whole point. So it's
as somebody I Sherpa raids, and it is one of those things where for a consistent clear to be able to estimate what our damage output can be and how quickly we can do that, somebody's always running well in Divinity. Like usually the person with well is the person running Divinity. Just so you have both of those covered. And I feel like that is good, especially for consistency. Up in higher level play, I can see it being something where it's just like, well, somebody's got to run this because it may not necessarily be a play style that somebody is used to, right? Or that it forces you into a play style running that loadout the entire time.
A very stagnant play style.
Yeah. And so I can see both sides of the argument here. My feeling, like, what can we do? We've all been using our I feels all night during this conversation. It's something that I've been clocking. I was like, I wonder how many times it's been said. I haven't been writing it down, but it's been a lot.
Yeah.
And that's been something that I've learned in my ability to give feedback is it's less a hard found truth and more a what you're feeling in the moment and how you communicate that. If it's a feeling, you can't really argue it, but then that can also get into that emotional argument whole thing. What do you guys feel like are successful strategies for giving feedback that isn't maybe shaded by emotion? Like,
yeah, it's hard, right? Like, how do you separate what someone is saying in your opinion from cognitive dissonance is really the question you're asking. I think, and I think that takes a very aware person and someone who is not tired, not emotionally driven, mature enough. We have a lot of young people in this community. It happens. And I think, and also one thing that absolutely does not help is like hive mentalities and echo chambers, which all forums serve as, Twitch chats, Reddit, Twitter, they all have their own communities that hang out there, and they're all more likely to think a certain type of way. And takes one person to start a general sentiment. I don't think you can. Like, I don't think you can combat that. I think it's too ingrained. I think you can do your best to do things like Bobby does and, try to pull individuals away from it. But I have learned pasting the same comment 50 times, it doesn't even make a dent. It does not matter. You can copy and paste the same answer. There's there's just too many people. That's just what it is. There are too many people that join that echo chamber. And so I think as individuals, we can try to do our best, and hopefully, you know, that feedback reaches through the noise. But it's hard, man.
I spend a lot of time floating between echo chambers. I don't know how I fell into this spot, but I don't. I really don't. Because like I float between some of the worst and some of the best conversationalists in Twitter mostly. I don't really dabble in Reddit too much. My Twitch chat's pretty mellow in the fact if everybody, you know, understands like how I function. But in Twitter specifically, and I spend an exorbitant amount of time on Twitter. I do. So most of the stuff that comes from me is not an I feel from me. It's I took this from this toxic member, and I took this from this non-toxic member, and you guys met in the middle out of your paragraph with this sentence. And then I use that back to them and say, hey, you know, this is where you're sitting at. If we had more people that were willing to do that without putting their own emotions into it, I think ultimately you could. I mean, like, I hate to call him out. I had Multimock on the Scrimcast, and everyone knows who Multimock is on Twitter. Him and his community I had Multimock and Calico together. Absolutely love them both.
Yeah. I
do. And that's a weird statement because both of them are blocked by hundreds of people. They're both blocked. You know, they spit off. When I was able to separate their emotional states for the game and have them provide valid feedback by guiding the conversation, even Merc was like, dude, I wish they talked like this on Twitter.
Yeah.
The feedback that they gave and the instructions and the tips and the walkthroughs, they're like, how? I don't understand. And that's all about conversational guiding. It's a psychology thing.
Also, that sort of conversationalism, though, is not going to be as regarded by their communities. So they won't, if they post a tweet longer talking about it, they won't get as many likes, right? It's like
sensationalist,
sensationalist,
impression farm,
reactionary, exactly. And so that goes back to the echo chamber. I'm sure they're great guys. Like I have no problem with either of them, but it's definitely, you know, I have a lot of, you know, like I said, I'm in the hardcore PvE community, and that is probably the most toxic sect of Destiny. Like there are,
depending on the week.
Yeah, well, I don't even know, man. I make the joke a lot of times, like, the best way to know someone's personality in Destiny is to check how many clears they have of Garden of Salvation, because there are certain groups of people that do that sort of thing. That it's like,
even I know that.
Yeah, there's definitely a red flag value in there, and it's like, you know, there's some. It's just no one knows how to have a conversation, man. And it's like you can start off trying, and maybe like even in like Salt's case, right? I feel like 90% of rational people in Salt's case would just snap, you know, like once they get the same comment calling him elitist or like a ableist or whatever so many times, like most even rational people, they're gone. They're off the deep end, you know, and it's he handled it very well. But I think, you know, some of these people have they've felt ignored or misunderstood for a long time, and it's kind of cultivated in a very toxic way.
And they're seeing like they're seeing something that maybe has been eating at them in that tweet by reading the context, because text doesn't always contribute to context in those conversations.
I think it's so odd, but I think a conversation that needs to be had as well that we don't talk about is like, how much does it even matter, you know, like how much? Obviously Bungie sees the feedback, but there have been very many times where it's like the community seems to overwhelmingly think one thing, and Bungie's like, we're going to do it this way. And it's like, how does this even matter? The Salt thing, did we all just like die on this hill for no reason at all? You know, is this falling upon, for lack of better terms, deaf ears? That's obviously not conveying what I mean, but
right.
Bungie obviously has their plan for the next 6 months or whatever, and I don't think Salt or me or any other single person tweeting about anything is gonna change that, to be honest. So
I'm going to disagree there.
Yeah,
I am, because as somebody in tech and in coding, especially looking at something that's got an 8-year frame of netcode, these aren't things that can be changed in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 3 months. These are things that if they, and this is just something that I've seen from running teams of network engineers and network architects and everything else, large scale changes that you could do on one little thing. Say if we'll use Divinity, for example, right? If they nerf the debuff in Divinity, because the code is so far back, it could break something in a strike. And that's just the name of the game with code, because it's built in a tree. So like you have each branch has its own specific thing, like Divinity, but it's still tied back to another branch, which is tied back to the entire tree itself. And there's other branches within that line. So if you change something at the end of that branch, it could, in theory, break something that's all the way on the other side that does not even affected to it. And these aren't small changes. This is anything, really. I mean, how many times has Telesto broken the game?
Yeah,
right?
I guess I'm speaking more of like design philosophy, though, and not actual changes. Like not that it'll take Bungie a long time to do these changes, but the fact that I think Bungie might not want to make that change in the first place. You maybe Divinity, maybe
Absolutely.
and I'm not really sure. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't know, man.
I think, and I'm gonna throw an I think out here.
Okay.
I think that we should continue to provide the feedback effectively and directly without feeling. That's the big thing.
Kind of flat.
Without feeling.
Like
exactly. Say, hey, this is something I've seen, and then open the discussion that way. Not, I'm so tired of dying to this.
Right.
Because while you're dying to it, maybe he's not. Maybe they're not. And that's kind of it. I don't envy them at all.
No.
Having to sift through. I mean, I've dove into Reddit a little bit, and like some of the subthreads in there just wow. I'm reading through it and I'm like, are you a real person? There's no way. It's so much energy towards anger and energy towards Bungie has to fix this now because I hate it.
Yeah.
No, they don't. Because while you hate it, the other person doesn't. And that makes it harder for them to sort. If you say this is broken because of this.
Yeah.
And this is what it does. These damage numbers are way too high. Or the Vandal sniping, right? We'll stick on your guys' side of the house. The Vandal one-taps. Like, hey, there's a lot of Vandals in this strike that are all one-tapping. Makes it really fucking hard to solo.
Yeah.
Like, that's still direct feedback without the feeling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's a line that needs to be drawn up a little bit more effectively on both sides of the house.
I've got a couple of things before we close out the night. So I went and I was able to solo flawless the Prophecy on Tuesday.
Nice.
I was using a Laura Lee Titan right before they nerfed Laura literally hours.
You have to go do it again now for it to count.
Oh, now I have to go do it again to satisfy the guy in my Instagram comments.
Yeah, emblems revoked.
To satisfy that guy who was like, I'm going to be solo flawlessing every dungeon until they nerf Laura Lee. It's just too powerful.
I'm bummed I didn't, honestly. I was told by everybody I need to jump in and run Lorely. I was like, yeah, no, I'll get to it. And now it's nerfed. I'm like,
it's still very good.
It's still very good. They took like a stack away from it.
Yeah,
and
it's like still.
I was finding myself like people were like, oh, it got nerfed. And I was like, oh, it got nerfed. Okay, cool. Yeah, I was still running it. It felt kind of the same. There were instances where night and day comparison of the change during the whole thing. So like during Prophecy, I was not afraid of bosses. I was not afraid of enemies. I was afraid of gravity and physics. Like those were my two enemies that I was fighting against the entire time. It really didn't matter what my loadout was, because like I kind of knew the pacing of how I would take it using the tools that were at my disposal. It was just kind of the weird thing of like, oh, we're just gonna flat, and like you hit a wall and die or something, right?
Yeah.
And so, but like running a master catch crash later on that evening, I died a couple of times, and I was like, you know what? I deserve that. I got a little too cocky there. And that's like, I feel like you can still use Lorelei effectively. You just have to change just a hair of the periphery to kind of guide you on that.
So good tune. That's a good tune then.
Yeah. I felt it was fine. I felt it was fair because I felt like I was a god going into Prophecy.
Yeah, it's a hard one because we're kind of power crept to hell and back at this point, right? And I mean that goes back to the Divinity and Well thing. I think we're gonna hit a wall, if like a Reckoning situation. Reckoning was almost exactly this when it came out, and it was a huge problem. And so I hope that doesn't happen again. Just a brief for people who might not know, Reckoning was explicitly designed to one-shot you by knocking you off the map because you were impossible to kill. And so if you didn't have a Well Warlock on your team, if you're loading in, you could not do it. It was like a 90% chance you failed. If you had a Warlock on your team, 50% chance they get booped off the map. It was just a miserable experience all around. And I am worried that we're heading back towards that, especially without sunsetting, because like power creep is getting nuts right now. We're gods, every build, every class. So that's kind of that was a tangent. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Ads have felt like for a while like they're a formality from the start of a thing to a boss.
Yeah,
and while the champion puzzle is added into that to make it like a little more interesting, it is something that has also kind of become a formality.
Yeah,
just at this point, it's more doffing the cap and going, oh hello, I see you, than it is a challenge in most regards, at least for like me as a player.
Yeah, and Prophecy is a really interesting example because it was tough to solo when it first came out. It was definitely the hardest dungeon at the time. Especially the knights in the first encounter, like would like 2-tap you. It was scary. Now it's just like 5 minutes. Let me go.
I was using a glaive and a sword and Witherhoard the entire time, and just going in.
Yeah, I mean it feels great though, right?
Yeah,
like
great.
it's
but
it's a balance, you know. I don't know. I don't envy that person's job either. It turns out I don't envy a lot of people's jobs.
You know what? I'm fairly good with mine. Is what I'm finding out of all.
Yes.
Of this.
I'll stick to chemistry, please. You know.
Yeah. The post. What I kind of wanted to like steer us into next is this post by Rami Ismail. He posted earlier this week on September 5th or last week, September 5th, before the whole Salted Grapple thing happened, right? And I think it's kind of important and kind of defining of what maybe we do on Twitter, as opposed to like maybe what somebody listening to this at home is doing. Maybe the player at home that just fires up Destiny, knows nothing about the community, is doing, right? And so he says, most devs watch streamers and mostly disregard them for core feedback, as they're non-typical players with external motivations to play. That said, will collate findings for sentiment, what they and their audiences react to, and how the meta or understanding of the game evolves. How do you guys feel about that sentiment? Do you think it's fair? Do you think it's something that...
Right after this, I have a meeting with all of the other streamers and devs.
Yeah.
To go over the next nerfs.
Okay, cool.
Because they listen directly.
Yeah.
No, that's not how that works at all.
Yeah.
Not how I think that they do. I think that they do hear not streamer feedback, but I think they do listen to. Oh, how do I word this? I think they do listen to the upper echelon, but I also think that they listen to the person that types in the forum that says, I haven't been able to beat some random low end strike because I keep dying to this. I don't think Bungie takes a huge chunk out of Twitch. I don't think Bungie takes a huge chunk out of Twitter. And I don't think it takes a very big chunk out of Reddit. I think most of the conversations that they take the most value out of are the forums. Because they're regulated.
Yeah.
I do. I think that that's one of their best places to find feedback. Because people, when they log into a forum, your gamer tag is tied to it. People aren't going to throw smack and shade on a forum where your gamer tag is tied to it.
Well, I don't know.
To a degree, right?
Yeah, to a degree.
I mean, my gamer tag is tied everywhere. Everywhere.
Yeah.
But you can't really make... I mean, you can make alts to go on there, but then you're a no picture created yesterday alt, and it can be seen.
Yeah. I've seen some pretty wild stuff on the Bungie forums, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I bet they look at those a lot. Do you guys know ATP? All the players? Yeah, he used to be a Bungie forum ninja, so he would actually have a lot of insight into this, I think. So, which is Ninja's like their moderator team for those who don't know. So
yeah.
Pretty cool stuff.
I thought that was interesting because I was like, you know what? Like that makes sense to me. Like as somebody who streams, as somebody who has like a profit motive, I guess, to stream the game, but also has like a deep investment in the community and a love for the game. Like I can see why somebody would disregard maybe like something that I would say as motivated for those reasons. And maybe sentiment is probably the most valuable thing that I could give to them based on what my community would say to me and vice versa, right? Like not necessarily this needs to be nerfed, this needs to be, but like gauging public interest, I guess it would be like the way that I see it. And so that kind of changed how I look at how I respond online a little bit and how I give feedback on things. Yeah. So
I mean, even that, it can be difficult though, because like all of us are going to have mini echo chambers of communities that we fostered, right? Like I tend to have a more hardcore community than some people, and Bobby is almost certainly has a community that's more skewed towards PvP. So I agree with this take. I mean, he obviously does like way better than just some nerd neck on the internet, right? Like, but yeah, I mean, if I was doing data collection, I don't think I'm going to go to some random guy with streaming or whatever. I totally get that.
Yep.
So yeah, I don't know. Plus, they have all the data and stuff on the back end. Like they know so much more than we think they know. So
the data really is probably what speaks the most. Like if everybody quit playing Crucible on like a day, that would be more of a blip and probably more feedback for them. Not saying people should do that, by the way. I'm not advocating for that, but that would probably be more meaningful feedback.
Yeah.
Than like, I hate the Crucible. This is what like it probably means more to them in game than it does.
So you're saying like PvP players need to like unionize?
I'm saying
he's starting to move here, guys.
They need to seize the means of production.
Yeah, exactly.
Guys, thank you so much for being on tonight. It means a lot to me. I like, we haven't really interacted outside of like Twitter. So it's good that we were able to like hop into a call, like
our echo chamber, right?
That's echo chamber. Yeah. Our mutual echo chambers that we share together that are separate from one another that also are echo chambers.
I'm so sorry if you ever have to see one of my terrible memes. It's just
I swear to God. I do it for you one more time. If I have to see your face on YouTube going like this, One more
okay,
time.
Listen here, fucker. Dude. I'll make a lot of faces for clout. That's all I'm saying, dog. Like,
but
yeah,
it's been wonderful. It's been wonderful having you guys on.
Thank you.
Why don't we wrap up by once again you guys telling folks where they can find you on the internet?
Skarrow, you go first this time.
Okay. Yeah. Once again, Skarrow9 on Twitter, Skarrow9 streaming and videos on YouTube. I am very much focused on kind of the end portion of the games, triumph hunting, seal hunting, end game challenges, that sort of thing. So if you consider yourself someone who's interested in kind of the upper echelon of Destiny, the elitists, if you will, the people who want Divinity nerfed, if you will, that's definitely me. So you can find me there. Skarrow9 pretty much everywhere. So.
And I am BobbySocks. It's BobbySocks, all one word, on Twitch, on Twitter. I started an Insta and I gave up because I got bored.
Algorithm.
And I have ADHD. You can find me there. I am a PvP player. I tout myself as the best at being average.
Bro, you have the emblem? You have the social credit emblem? You're like one of 3.
4.
One's probably a dev account or something, to be honest. But
4, yeah. I have that one.
Do you know the other people that have it, or because usually like there's a single dev account with like each emblem on it, and then but still, that's insane. Congrats.
No, I do. It's myself. It's Zay Osiris. It's Zay's buddy who also runs a Facebook tutorial lesson plan, Jared,
okay.
And then Vertigo Vixen.
Oh, okay.
Those are the 4 of us.
There you go.
Yeah.
I know some people that would probably murder you for that. So, in like a jealous way,
right.
Like a good way, like the way you would want to be murdered.
Yeah,
not like a bad way.
It's crazy.
All
I go from
next time.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much for tuning in this week. My name's Danfinity. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, where the eyes are else. You can catch me 3 days a week on Twitch at twitch.tv/Danfinity, helping Guardians do pinnacle and in-game PvE activities. If you'd like to support the show, remember to rate and review on your podcast platform of choice. This show is also listener supported, so if you'd like to give a few bucks a month to keep the lights on, head on over to coffee.com/Danfinity. All links are in the notes for the episode. Good luck in trials this week, and I hope you find what you're grinding for.